make a difference. Ran for danger while others turned away. Now it seems the world's against him, and no one knows quite what to say. Yeah! Live the life and follow the path forged in fire, burning bright through the darkest night. Though the world may turn its back on him, he still stands. Won't lose the fight. He walked through fire with no applause, carried burdens that nobody saw, judgmental words and glares that wound. A price has been paid that few can understand. Live the life and follow the path forged in fire, burning bright through the darkest night. Though the world may turn its back on him, he still stands. Won't lose the fight. Maybe strength was an armored war. Maybe it was the truth they chose to endure. When the world turned cold and he felt some more, he still rose, still carried on. Live the life and follow the path forged in fire, burning bright through the darkest night. Though the world may turn its back on him, he still stands. Won't lose the fight. Backbone laid in fire. Still alive, to every former but current member of law enforcement, thank you.
Hello, friends. Do you have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name's Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRNradio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRNradio.
Not to be a backseat driver, but can you say for sure you got the best monthly payment possible on your auto loan? Could it be that you might have gotten a better deal by shopping the loan at a few places and have a lower car payment? Next time, before you go car shopping, visit Communication Federal Credit Union first. Our auto loan experts will find you a perfect loan and get you the lowest monthly payment we can. Communication Federal. your auto loan experts. Restrictions apply. Federally insured by NCUA.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the number one way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
From red dirt roads to the Capitol steps, Rick's calling truth, no time for regrets. Fire in his voice, facts in his hand, talking sense to the heart of this land. It's the Rick Robinson Show where the truth rides high. No spin, no script, just an eagle in the sky. From D.C. to Tulsa, he's calling it out. Mic in his hand, yeah, he's got the clout. Heartland Radio, raw and real.
Uh-oh, guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody?
It is Wednesday, my dudes.
Noise cutting through the lies, shining light where the shadow hides, with guests in the mix
And welcome into the Rick Robinson Show. It is the Chat Lives Matter Day edition. I don't know, some of you are looking at your watch going, dude, what the hell? Let me explain. So it's funny because I used to know a couple of programming directors here locally fairly well. And I made fun of them when they moved from doing their morning shows to doing afternoon drive time. And then I hit 50. And then I hit 51. And then I hit 52. And then it made sense. All right. So I had this big, bold plan, right? That what I was going to do was, because I'm not having to play grandpa bus driver anymore. I was going to start making sure that I was up by about 6 a.m, do some show prep, get a couple articles put in the hopper for the couple of places that I write for, and then do the show work, and then get done with the show, and then do the writing, and then break for lunch, and then, come back and do the night shift stuff. That hasn't been working, especially in the wintertime. Because, dude, I don't know about y'all, but now that I'm old, it takes a minute to get out of bed. So what I've decided, because this way, one, I haven't had nearly the writing time that I want. The fact that I haven't been able to, I actually have a children's book sitting here half finished that I haven't been able to carve out time to finish. I really want to get that done before the end of the month. I've got the writing's all done, the illustrations are all done. I just have to get them put together and then send it off to print. So that is high on my priority list for this month because it was just going to be a keepsake book for my grandchild, and then somebody's like, "Hey, this is cool enough. You should just put it out." So I am. So yeah, Rooster is making a great point. Every time I say I have a big plan, I say to myself, "Yeah." Anyway, but yeah, so yeah, that's the thing. I always thought, and let me fix this because I just realized I haven't done that yet. So for those of you also wondering why I am showing up on your screen tinier than usual, one, you're welcome because now you can't see my face as well. Two, it's because everybody's noticed that has a huge YouTube following that doing formats like this seem to bring in a lot more traffic. So since we do have a YouTube channel that has been kind of stagnant for at least a while, I'm going to try this and see if that helps. We have 112 subscribers on YouTube. If you would like to follow us there, you are welcome to do so. It doesn't cost anything. I know everybody seems to get confused nowadays with the word. Well, it says it's a subscription. Trust me, on YouTube it means something different. And we're not even large enough yet that if I wanted to do the paid part that we could. That's actually one of the things I'm trying to work on. But anyway, so we're here, we're live, and yeah, Rooster, just because I can see it all now. I had a big plan, I say to myself, when I think I'll be productive with house chores on a Saturday. Yeah. See, that's kind of the same thing that I'm kind of running into. Look, I promise I'm not trying to make excuses, but I'm also not trying to be braggadocious either. Um, I'm involved in about 80% of the content on this network in one form or the other. So the work that I am in front of a mic for averages out to about 20 hours a week right now. That doesn't even count the stuff that I'm doing production work for, the uploads to the archives for, and everything else. I don't count those things because I don't really get paid for that time. I get paid for this time, I get paid for my writing time, those kind of things, but I don't really get paid for the behind the scenes stuff yet. So I don't really count that towards my workload. I probably should, but then if I did, I'd probably cry. Because then I'd realize I'm probably putting in about 100 hours a week. I don't want to make myself cry. But that's one reason why I started. So the time change will be permanent, at least for now. We're going back to what was my original time slot when I was doing 3 hours, which started at noon Eastern time and ran until three. But now we're doing noon to two. Primarily because on Fridays we now have the weekend news roundup, which kicks off at three. So that gives me a lunch break to make sure that I'm not hangry while I'm hanging out with Brad and everybody else. Also, it frees up more time for me because now I can get up around the time that I was normally getting up to start doing show prep and feeling rushed about it. Now I can do show prep and maybe get an article or two in the hopper and then do my show. And then that if I get it all done the right way, then technically I could be done from about one my time most days until about five or six. So, and the other reason is I have a couple of folks, for some reason, even though, I try to make this show at least a little bit about Oklahoma, for some reason we have a really large West Coast following. So I've been getting messages from folks going, "Hey, you haven't really been keeping up with the archives very well for the last month or so. And we don't want to get up at 7 in the morning." So, yeah, I'm trying to accommodate everyone and also trying to carve out more time to make sure that I can do the things that I need to do. I do want to give a quick shout out again to Rooster for hanging out in the chat. We haven't seen you much lately, man, but I also do understand, you're like happily married and stuff now, so you have other more important things to do than to hang out with folks like me. All right, so let's get into the meat of the show because yeah, there's a lot to talk about. So I didn't do a show yesterday because my internet was being a little cranky. We did some testing around here, did some time on the phone with a tech, had a tech come out and check some stuff in the backyard, and it seems like it's working again for now. So cross your fingers. I'm hoping I have exercised the goblins because I blame Amish. We did a juxtaposition a couple weeks ago on goblins, and since then my stuff has been crazy. But again, we have a lot to cover today. We're not going to do much speculation. Also, try to do as little spin as possible, but we are going to be discussing consequences. Because consequences is the word of the day, ladies and gentlemen. Because this week, the gap between what people say and what people do, that circle squared up and closed off really fast. So we have federal subpoenas, media figures discovering the law actually does still apply to them, the Supreme Court quietly redrawing the boundaries of power, a global elite summit that suddenly feels, shall we say, nervous, and an Arctic island that just became one of the most strategic pieces of land on Earth. We're not going to be discussing the chaos, and the media wants you to think this is nothing but chaos, but it's not. The lamestream media, the zombie media wants you to use a word the administration coined recently. They want you to be a panicking. This isn't chaos. It's realignment, and it's realignment on the world stage, and it's been happening for about a year now. So to go into the first part of this, we have to back up a little bit. So for the better part of a decade, we've lived under an illusion that federal law only matters when it's politically convenient. That illusion cracked this week in none other a place than Minnesota. Federal immigration enforcement surged into the Twin Cities region, not quietly, not apologetically, but openly, visibly, and legally. And almost immediately, the Department of Justice followed up with subpoenas. So let's be very clear about what this is and what it is not. This is not a deportation panic story, because most of my listeners wouldn't be panicking about mass deportation anyway. This isn't a federal agents running wild, run amok in Minneapolis story. And this is not a case of political disagreement. This is a criminal investigation into obstruction. Federal prosecutors are examining whether state and local officials, including the governor's office and major city leadership, crossed the line from criticism into interference. And I can 100% tell you that, in my opinion, they have. And there is, make no mistake, a line, and people are starting to figure that out now. You can, and I have even at times as well, criticize ICE. You can refuse voluntary cooperation. You can hold press conferences and pass resolutions. What you cannot do is this kind of stuff: coordinated resistance, signal operational interference, encourage disruption, or create conditions that materially obstruct federal officers. That's not politics, that's statute. And here's what matters most for all you folks at home: subpoenas don't show up because of speeches, they show up when patterns appear. When communications matter, when timelines matter, when intent matters. Minnesota just became the test case for whether federal authority still means something in the interior of the country, not just at the border. And this story doesn't end with politicians. Now, I'm going to stop right here for a second, because I need to say this, and I need you to hear me. What we are watching right now is open rebellion. The lamestream media won't call it that. The zombie media won't call it that. Most of your politicians won't even call it that. But it's open rebellion. These people have decided that federal law doesn't matter, that our immigration laws don't matter. You know what? If you decide the immigration laws don't matter, then you need to change them. And make no mistake, Virginia, whether you agree with what they did or not, just elected a new governor. Within the last 48 hours, we'll be getting into more of this later. Within the last 48 hours, they have started the process to change the entire scope of Virginia, which is how this stuff is supposed to work. I don't like what's happening in Virginia, but the voters apparently supposedly got their say from some of the things that I'm seeing coming out of their legislative body. I'm not so sure about that, since they're going to try to make hand counts illegal in Virginia. So, for those of you who are of conservative bent, it might be time to vote with your feet. There's no shame in moving somewhere else and then coming back to fight another day before they round you up and start putting you in a FEMA camp. But somebody else found out that, the law still matters, and we're going to be talking about that in a second as well. Before we do that, though, I do want to talk to you about our band, KLR Radio House Band, which is technically artificial intelligence. We used to have a house parody band, but Al and the artist formerly known as Beaker don't really have time to put songs out that often anymore. Besides, Al actually is a full-time musician on top of everything else that he does. So I've been taking some riffs that I've had floating around for forever and some ideas for music tracks and feeding them into programs like Suno. Because I do have commercial rights, I do have the ability to release this stuff publicly, and we have been. Now, look, if music made by AI is a Rubicon line for you, and you're, well, as a musician, I won't support it. Trust me, I come from a family of musicians. One of the things that I love about this is I have all of these concepts and ideas that have been floating around in my head forever and absolutely nothing to do with them, because I didn't have $3,000 to throw at a studio and go, I need a band and I need a singer and I need about 2 hours of your time for $3,500, please. So that's why I love what I'm able to do now. And if you want to support it, great, you can. Just go to whatever streaming service you like to get your music from and search KLR Radio House Band. We have 3 tracks out under there now. First one I ever wrote by myself was Freedom Isn't Free. That's again been an idea that's been rattling around my head for a few years. Next one was We Ain't Changed, based on the fact that the left seems to think that we want a civil war. I don't really know why they think we're the ones that want one, since they're the ones trying to start it, but it's a story for another day. Most recent one actually jumped the line. That's Forged in Fire. That one was actually inspired by the whole ICE shooting in Minneapolis and the public outcry to have the dude basically shot and drawn and quartered. Next one that comes out, which is next week, is a tribute to all first responders, known as Standing in the Gap, or called Standing in the Gap. So those three of them are available. One is coming out next week, and I have a couple others that I'm still trying to get finalized for distribution. So if you like what we're doing there, make sure you go give it a listen, share it with your friends. And again, if AI music isn't your thing, you're not going to hurt my feelings. All right. So, so what happens when a person who's supposed to be reporting the news makes themselves part of the story? Which brings us to none other than Don Lemon. For years, Don Lemon occupied a protected space. Commentator, provocateur, cultural megaphone. Say outrageous things, stir outrage, move on, and then do it again. That protection is gone, however. This week, Le Mans found himself on notice from federal authorities after participating in, not merely reporting about, an anti-ICE protest that entered a church during services. And we're going to slow this part down for a second because this is where people start getting confused. He hasn't been charged yet. No indictments have been filed, but they are exploring potential charges, and the Department of Justice doesn't issue public warnings lightly. Federal civil rights statutes don't care whether you're holding a microphone or a megaphone, they care whether protected rights were interfered with. Churches are legally and constitutionally protected spaces. Worship is a protected activity, and live streaming while participating is not journalism. That's what we call evidence. This is the moment where the media's favorite talking point collapses because words don't. So this now, what I love about this is the same people that are screaming "words don't matter" were the same people that used to equate silence with violence. Because words do matter. They do in fact matter. When words encourage action, when rhetoric becomes mobilization, when commentary turns into participation. Don Lemon is discovering something Minnesota officials may also be learning the hard way because they have now entered the FAFO zone. You don't get the legal protections of the press and the immunity of activism at the same time. Cable news can applaud the outrage. Federal law counts the bodies in the room. And now the same DOJ investigating obstruction in Minnesota is examining whether lines were crossed in public on camera in real time. That's not coincidence. That's enforcement. And I have a feeling that Don Lemon's chickens are about to come home to roost. If you get my meaning, Mr. Frodo. Now, so as we so far we've kind of taken a wide angle view. We're gonna zoom out just a little bit more because hovering all over all of this, Minnesota, ICE, Don Lemon is the quiet authority of the Supreme Court because while politicians argue and pundits posture, the court decides who actually has the power. This week, the justices weighed cases that will define the next decade. Can a president remove officials from independent agencies, or does independence mean immunity? Can states restrict firearm carry on private property open to the public, or does the Second Amendment follow the citizen? Can law enforcement vacuum up location data from every phone near a crime, or does the Fourth Amendment still apply? And perhaps most tellingly, the court declined for now to rule on the legality of sweeping tariffs. Translation: the court is cautious, not passive. When that ties back to why that ties back to Minnesota, that's quite simple. The rule of law doesn't disappear because it's inconvenient. And when institutions forget their limits, SCOTUS reminds them. So let's back up a second and talk about this, the rule on the decline to rule on tariffs yet again for now. What is the third week? This has a lot of my friends really, really nervous because they are under the impression that this means SCOTUS is likely to rule against Donald Trump. All I'm going to say about that is I don't think so. I think if they were going to rule against him, they would have done it already, especially with him. Just think about this. They kicked it down the can again with him threatening to put new tariffs on Europe. If they were going to rule against him, this week would have been the week to do it. I don't think they're going to rule against him. I don't know if they are going to rule completely for him either. I still think this may wind up being one of those Solomon splitting the baby kind of things. I think, I don't really know, but the fact that they keep kicking this can down the road means they're deliberating something that they haven't yet decided on yet. And if they were even leading 90-10 on shutting him down, I think this week would have been the week to do it. Oh, that's not wrong, Rooster. So Rooster in the chat, Rush Limbaugh used to call them the drive-by media. How long until it's a literal nickname? Oof. There's a thought. Don Lemon screeching tires in an SUV. Oh, sorry. Did I say that out loud? Anyway. Rooster, you might be onto something. So Rooster again in the chat. I'm gonna go ahead and put this on the screen. I'm imagining Newsom and Hochul poking Waltz with a stick to get him to act the way he does. Primarily unlikely, allegedly seeing if Trump would actually arrest a governor. I gotta say this. I've been calling for Operation Scratch and Sniff for a while, which is what I call it what I would call it if we decided to go snag Walls, for various reasons. But yeah, I think we probably already should have renditioned both Walls and the mayor for fomenting terrorist activity. But this is the difference between me and our government. They like to give you the benefit of the doubt, and they like to do this whole Marquis of Queensberry thing, and I can't do that anymore. It's not even that I don't want to anymore. It's that I refuse. I refuse. And for anybody who thinks that I'm on the wrong track, again, just look at what's happened in Virginia in the last 48 hours. If we lose the midterms, we're done. They will grind everything to a halt. They will, even if they can't get Trump impeached, they will spend the next 2 years doing everything they can to grind all of the progress to a halt that we've made. And I submit to you right now, for those of you that are looking at 5% GDP going, damn, I didn't think we'd get there. For all the folks that are posting, when I voted for cheaper gas, I wasn't expecting this. I'm going to say this. If the Fed had listened to Trump 6 months ago when he was calling for rates to be cut, 7 months ago, 8 months ago, when he was calling for rates to be cut, we would probably already be sitting on 6% GDP. This is why Davos is nervous. So I've got a clip that I want to play from one of the speakers inside Davos. Not the one you're probably expecting, but one that I think is actually more important because this guy just basically just walked in and nuked the entire global new world order. And that is none other than Howard Lutnick. So we've got a clip I'm going to be putting up. Give me just a second. All right, you guys should hopefully be seeing it now. And here we go.
Okay. We are in Davos at the World Economic Forum. And the Trump administration and myself, we are here to make a very clear point. Globalization has failed the West and the United States of America. It's a failed policy. It is what the WEF has stood for, which is export, offshore, far shore, find the cheapest labor in the world, and the world is a better place for it. The fact is, it has left America behind. It has left the American workers behind. And what we are here to say is that America First is a different model, one that we encourage other countries to consider, which is that our workers come first. We can have policies that impact our workers. Sovereignty is your borders. You're entitled to have borders. You shouldn't offshore your medicine. You shouldn't offshore your semiconductors. You shouldn't offshore your entire industrial base and have it be hollowed out beneath you. You should not be dependent for that which is fundamental to your sovereignty on any other nation. And if you're going to be dependent on someone, it darn well better be your best allies. Okay? And so that is a different way of thinking. It is completely different than the WEF. I viewed the WEF as not a flagpole in the middle, but in fact, they are the flag. Whichever way the wind blew, so it blew. You should have solar, you should have wind. Why are you going to do solar and wind? Why would Europe agree to be net zero in 2030 when they don't make a battery? They don't make a battery. So if they go 2030, they are deciding to be subservient to China, who makes the batteries.
All right, so we're going to be discussing this more in hour 2, but I had to play that clip because you want to know why the Davos crowd is quaking in their boots today? Because of clips like that. My name is Rick Robinson. You are listening to my show. This is the Rick Robinson Show, now live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at starting at noon Eastern time and ending at 2. One of the reasons we've gone to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday is because Big E, known as Earl Jackson, does a show over at SHR Media in this same time slot, and we are going to be supporting him when we're not on the air ourselves. Because one of the things I do want to talk to you about before we take the break, and then we have to take the break, is this. You know, I hear all the time, and I actually put this out on a post today. I hear all the time that people want the media to be different, that the media needs to be different than what it is today. And the funny thing is, there are a lot of us that are trying. Just some of you may not even necessarily notice because you're too busy doing the whole, shall we say, playing the corporate media tune. There is a completely different group of media folks out here that are more kind of mid-tier. And I don't mean that as an insult either. I mean, we haven't broken through the signal to noise ratio yet. And there are a group of us that have decided to band together, not because we're all owned by the same place, not because we're all trying to line each other's pockets, but because we believe in each other's messages. So not only does KLR Radio have a vast array of content, especially compared to most podcast groups, we also work with a couple of other podcast groups, SHR Media being one of them, and that's who Big E is a part of. You may recognize that name because we typically run some of their content on Mondays, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And, just pointing out that, we also have Buffoon of the Week, which we typically simulcast every Wednesday night when they have their live broadcast. And we also support their Buffoon of the Week stuff that they put out through YouTube. Most of those two are primarily on YouTube, so they have a much better YouTube following than we do, which is one of the things that I'm trying to fix right now. Because I have several different paths to monetization. Some of them are starting to work. YouTube is one that we haven't been able to figure out yet. So I'm starting to try to work on that. But look, if you want media to be different, you have to treat media different. I don't even care if it's not us. Go hang out with Sean's crew. Go hang out with Gene's crew. Go find whoever's, not already making thousands of dollars an hour doing this, and go support those folks, because those are the ones that are doing it because they love it. I mean, I can pay my bills doing this stuff. Some months are harder than others, but I can pay my bills doing this stuff. I don't have $100,000 laying around. I don't have $1 million in the bank. We do everything on a shoestring budget. And I'm not saying that to complain. I'm saying that if you really want media to be different, you need to start finding ways to support the folks that are trying to make media different. And again, before you start yelling at me, I don't even care if it's not me. All right. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Come gather round the footlights, lads, and hear the old boards groan. A tale of ink and iron will, of voices overblown. From mics and scripts to painted sails, we've traded shore for sea. The players will man the rigging soon. stage a ship a single breath. The course is not set yet. We play a sail, we play a sail, we play a sail soon. All hands to KLRN Radio, setting sail for Treasure Island, March 2026!
Darkness grips the heart of men, and truth becomes a lie. They dress their greed in borrowed prayers and call it justified. The loudest mouths preach mercy with a knife behind their smile. They laugh at those who won't bow down or walk their crooked mile. Those who stand for virtue will be rejected again and again, cast out in the cold for believing that right is still right. Even then, they'll say you're a fool for loving truth and lost for holding the line. When darkness grips the heart of men and truth becomes a lie, they trade their souls for silver and call the bargain peace. They curse the chains of righteousness while begging to be free. The crowd will cheer the liar if the lie feels warm and kind, but stones are safe for anyone who dares to reject the lies for the truth. Those who stand for virtue will be rejected again and again, branded the enemy for refusing to kneel as weak men did. They'll crown the wolves as shepherds and blindfold every eye. When darkness grips the heart of men and truth becomes a lie. Blessed are the lonely who won't betray what they believe. The road is narrow, the cost is high, but chains don't set you free. I'd rather walk with scars and God than kneel with gilded hands. Truth don't need 1,000 voices, just one that dares to stand. Those who stand for virtue will be rejected again and again, but the fire they try to bury still burns in faithful men. And then let the ages judge the moment, let heaven hear our cry. When darkness grips the heart of men, we will not live the lie. truth don't die. It burns eternal flame.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
Uh-oh. Guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody?
It is Wednesday, my dudes.
Again, otherwise known as Chat Lives Matter Day, right here live on KLRradio.com. I can't believe we're already almost through hour one. Also can't believe how much different the show feels now that I've moved it a couple hours later and I've actually had time for all my caffeine to kick in properly. Anyway, so we're here, we're live, and we're going to talk about something real quick. Well, first of all, in case the little drooling, chin nibbling motherfucker is like still hanging out on my X feed, you're dismissed, bitch. It's my feed. I can do what I want. And that goes out to at Dire Maker Band, whoever the fuck that is, or some sort of like European communist bastard or something. Anyway, so we started talking about before I played the Davos clip, because we'll get into that more hour two. We started talking about some of the Supreme Court stuff that's happening. One of the things that I saw today, which absolutely positively made my head explode, was some little rage bait click dude talking about how, oh my God, the Supreme Court just ruled the cops don't need a warrant to come into your house, blah, 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 blah. Well, guess what? Under certain circumstances, legally known as exigent circumstances, they've never needed a warrant to come into your house. So all the Supreme Court did was reaffirm something that lower courts have held now for decades, that there are certain circumstances that have to be reasonably proven should something go sideways, that cops followed for going into a house without a warrant because they felt they had a probable cause. Now, that has always been a thing. And for those of you who don't believe me, for those of you who doubt me, then do me a favor. I think you can find it on Roku. I think you can find it on Freevee. Go watch Hunter, the TV show from the 80s, with Fred Dryer as a cop. He talks about exigent circumstances all the time. Hey, McCall, you smell gas? Kicks in the door. Now, I'm not saying that's how it goes. I'm just saying that exigent circumstances has been a thing for about as long as there's been a Fourth Amendment, because for almost every rule there is an exception. So what has this poster, I guess, really really upset and trying to be rage baity about it is, I guess, it was I think it was in Wyoming. There was a girlfriend who called 911, said that she was away from the home and that her boyfriend was suicidal. The police arrived to do a welfare check, which happens all the time. They didn't get an answer at the door, so they decided to go ahead and go in. And then they found dude, I guess, hiding behind a curtain. Turns out he was holding a holster, not a weapon, but the officer that was first on the scene thought it was a weapon and I guess shot and killed him. So it went to court. Now, we can argue use of force all day long. This is still an exigent circumstances situation because they were responding to a call from someone who was concerned for someone else's life and they weren't getting an answer. I know how this works specifically because I watched my dad. Well, I wasn't there, but I heard about my dad going through the same thing when my brother passed away because my brother lived by himself. So he wound up having to call PD and fire, and the maintenance man came and let everybody in, and yeah, it was a mess. But yeah, there is such a thing as exigent circumstances. There has always been such a thing as exigent circumstances. For those of you that are watching TikTok and YouTubes that are all talking about the whole sovereign citizen crap and how you don't have to do this, you don't have to do that. If you're taking your legal advice from a YouTube channel, you are probably going to wind up being in trouble. Don't even take everything that I'm telling you at face value. Do your own research. Research matters for a reason. But don't just Well, that I don't have to give you my driver's license just because you've asked for it, officer. Yeah, let's try that approach just once. See how that goes. See how that goes. All right. So that was actually not really part of my prepared stuff for today, as far as the outline that I usually put together, but I felt like we had to talk about that. All right. So this is also really not part of my notes either, but it should have been, and I meant to make it part of my notes, and I didn't. So I've rectified that while we were on break. It's one of the reasons why I went ahead and played a longer music break instead of taking a shorter one. So got to talk about this. So everybody's, everybody knows about the Save Act. It's to bring integrity back to our elections because we have serious questions about our election integrity in this country anymore, and have had ever since 2020, especially with the news coming out of places like Michigan and Georgia and all the places that, oh, this isn't possible. And then guess what? It in fact was possible. So Senator Chuck Grassley, Republican Iowa, apparently is one of the folks that is not so sure he wants to vote for the Save Act. So this is one of the conservative movement's crown jewels in policy. Election integrity is a huge issue for base Republicans, and the U.S. Senator from Iowa said essentially, no thanks. Now, Mike Davis of the Article 3 Project disputes the letter and says this, but it seems clear to me that, so Mike Davis, Senator Grassley never said he opposed the Save Act. The language in this constituent form letter is about Pelosi's efforts in the past to make it easy for Democrats to rig and steal elections. So here is a bit of the text from the Save Act. This bill requires individuals to provide documentary proof of U.S. citizenship when registering to vote in federal elections. Specifically, the bill prohibits states from accepting and processing an application to register to vote in a federal election unless the applicant presents documentary proof of U.S. citizenship. The bill specifies what documents are considered acceptable proof of U.S. citizenship, such as identification that complies with the Real ID Act of 2025 that indicates U.S. citizenship. Further, the bill, one, prohibits states from registering an individual to vote in a federal election unless, at the same time, the individual applies to register to vote, the individual provides documentary proof of U.S. citizenship, and two, requires states to establish an alternative process under which an applicant may submit other evidence to demonstrate U.S. citizenship. Each state must take affirmative steps on an ongoing basis to ensure that only U.S. citizens are registered to vote, which shall include establishing a program to identify individuals who are not U.S. citizens using information supplied by certain sources. Additionally, states must remove non citizens from their official list of eligible voters. The bill allows for a private right of action against an elected official or an election official who registers an applicant to vote in a federal election who fails to present documentary proof of U.S. citizenship. The bill establishes criminal penalties for certain offenses, including registering an applicant to vote in a federal election who fails to present documentary proof of U.S. citizenship. All right, so let's take one of the left's biggest, meanest, baddest arguments about this whole thing and put it to bed. Wait, VC, you're gonna have to fill me in, brother. I missed your comment at the time, so now I'm not sure what you're referring to. But all right, so the Save Act, it's not gonna stop women who have been married from being able to vote. But Rick, their name doesn't match on their birth certificate. Their birth certificate still establishes their citizenship. So the biggest concern that a lot of folks seem to have, even if it's a real ID compliant ID, is it doesn't say anything about whether or not the person is an actual citizen. Maybe we should fix that. We're already going through all these hoops and expensive hoopla to make these fucking real ID compliant IDs that don't really do anything. So maybe, I mean, let's make everybody do it again. Make them get an ID, make that on their license or their state issued real ID. Make it give status, right? Like I mean, shit. We make people with learner's permits. It has to say that it's a learner's permit on there. We have people that have to wear glasses indicate they have to wear glasses. We have people with medical conditions have to indicate that they have the ability to have food and drink within reach of the driver, because technically in most states it's a misdemeanor to have that kind of stuff in the car. Nobody really talks about that anymore. But the whole thing about all of that is this. It's simple. Take your birth certificate with you. Take your marriage license with you. That shows your old name, shows your new name. And guess what? They're both legally binding documents. That and your photo ID, lickety split, you can vote. And it's not like the other thing, they're making this huge deal about all this. If especially if they do it at time of registration and your citizenship has already been established, you only really have to do that unless you move around a lot once or twice in your life. Just saying. Well, Rooster, you're exactly right there too. Even if cops witness a crime and you try to go into your domicile, guess what? They can follow you. Now, usually what happens on TV is they take hostages and it takes forever and yada yada blah blah blah. But still, but no, that's why I took a second, even though it wasn't really part of my prepared notes, because we have to talk about this Save Act crap, especially because of what's happening in Virginia. Because again, Virginia is about to trust me, it's likely going to pass. You have a Democratic governor now, you have Democratic controlled legislature, and they are proposing a bill to make it illegal for ballots to be hand counted in Virginia. If that passes, there will never be another Republican elected again unless or until you guys realize that it's time to actually go out and fucking vote. I don't know what happened in Virginia. Everybody, well, Winston Sears wasn't that good of a candidate, and Spamberger was a moderate. Okay, have you guys not figured out there's really no such thing as a moderate Democrat anymore? You're either communist or you're not. It's pretty much what that's my litmus test anymore. I don't even care about letters behind names anymore. Are you a communist? Are you for freedom? Because if you're a communist, I ain't voting for you. I ain't supporting you. In 48 hours, Spamberger I'm sorry, I know I say it wrong all the time. It's technically Spanburger, but I've always said Spamberger because it just rolls off the tongue easier. Plus, it's gross sounding, kind of like her. Yeah, so I mispronounce it. Kind of like with Mom Donnie. Half the time I can't get that right either. But no, seriously. It the Marquis of Queensberry stuff has to stop. I mean, I don't really even count Fetterman as a moderate Democrat anymore. Because if it was the he might have been able to be a Democrat in the 60s. His own party is about to run him out, brother. He's not going to count as a Democrat much longer. That's what I'm saying. They don't even allow moderates in the Democratic Party anymore. They allow them to pretend to be moderates in front of the cameras, and then as soon as they get them in power, they're like, you better run really, really hard to the left, bitch. And they usually do. And maybe up until now, the reason they have tolerated Fetterman is 9 times out of 10 he will vote with his caucus. But hang on, damn it, rules, giggity giggity, giggity goo, had to be done anyway. But yeah, 9 times out of 10 he'll vote with the party. There's only been a couple of times that he split with them, but those couple of splits have been enough because they're pretty much done with him now. The group that brought him to the dance is going to primary him. So, yeah, I don't think Fetterman will be around much longer. If he survives, he'll probably have to run as an independent if he even runs again. Okay, so here is a post from Chuck Grassley himself. Again, I take everything every damn politician ever says with a grain of salt, but this is from him. Looks like Dateline today, even actually, first thing this morning. Don't believe everything you read on the internet. I am not opposed to SAVE Act. In fact, I've been fighting alongside Iowa Secretary of State Pate to hold Biden admin accountable for their hiding immigration citizenship voter data in 2024 elections. Elections must be secure with only citizens voting. So I don't know. I feel a little bit better since he's come out with that, but I still don't really understand why so many Republicans are like, we're not sure if we're going to vote for this or not. I don't understand why it hasn't been put up for a vote already. I know they're trying to get the whole, I mean, they have like 9 days to finish the budget. So maybe that's what most of their focus is on right now. But they painted themselves into that corner. I don't really care. You painted yourselves into this corner. We didn't. All right. So top of the hour, bit of an update. So again, this is from our friends over at PJ Media. It looks like this was put out by Victoria Taft. And hang on, let me fix something because this is gonna drive me nuts if I don't. I thought I was logged into my account already. Wait, I guess I am. Never mind. They just have something at the top now. They didn't used to have that before. So we have a bit of an update on the Renee Good situation, and apparently it makes their narrative look even worse. This is from Julie Kelly on X. We've searched marriage records in several states, and there is no evidence that Renee Good and Becca Good are ever married. Renee Good petitioned for a name change in 2023 so she could share the last name as her partner, but there's no record of any marriage. I don't really know what bearing that has on this, but let's take a look and see where they're going with it. Since the unfortunate yet predictable death of Renee Good on January 7th for committing assault with a deadly weapon by ramming a 4,300 pound SUV into an armed immigration and customs enforcement agent, a persistent lie has been told about her backstory. It's likely that the left and their media allies believe the lie they're telling. They somehow believe this part of her past burnishes Good's leftist credentials, as if ramming her car into a federal officer wasn't radical enough to convince them. If you look closely, however, the story is changing. The narrative about Good's later in life lesbian marriage is quickly evaporating, giving an old Irish goodbye to the news media. That doesn't mean the media have corrected the record, but they have begun to quietly make the inaccurate portrayal of her marital status disappear. The first word of their relationship was said the day of the shooting. Becca Good's partner uh, uh, screamed at the ICE officer that he'd shot her wife, and after that, apparently the fact was simply too good to check. Of course, she'd likely considered her partner her wife, but nobody bothered to check the details. Also curious if common law counts where they're from, because I don't think they're actually from Minnesota either. Thanks to independent journalist Julie Kelly, we have learned that not only was Good not married to her lesbian partner, but that she legally changed her name to match her paramour's last name, not through marriage, but via an old fashioned World Be Free Meta World Peace Chad Oshino Snoop Dogg style name change. Good is a great brand name. As Kelly notes on her Substack, there were federal prosecutors who walked off the job rather than investigate the leftist and revolutionary groups that Good and her partner, Becca Good, were inspired by. The media and the left, same thing, really have a lack of curiosity about stuff that might make them look bad. So Kelly continued to write that they quit rather than pursue an inquiry into the woman described as the widow of Renee Good, the anti-ICE activist shot and killed on January 7th. I'll take things even further. There are now indications that there has been a group in Minnesota paying people in the Minneapolis area, $1,500 a week for paid protesting. I wonder how likely it is that Ms. Good was part of that paid cabal. Just a theory. Just a theory. All right, folks, that's the end of hour one. Hour two coming at you on the other side. For those of you hanging out in the chat, if you haven't yet, please make sure you are liking, sharing the feed. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you've also subscribed over at our YouTube channel, because we're trying to bring up the numbers over there now that we've got pretty solid X numbers all the time. Because unfortunately, X, while we get good numbers, doesn't track well. YouTube tracks better. So we're trying to build that stuff up, at least until we get kicked off again, because I have no illusions that won't happen. But also, programming note, I have also now been asked to sit in for Ross on Behind the Enemy Lines tonight. So I'll be hanging out with Gene at 9 o'clock Eastern time until Amish and I take over the airwaves at 10. Also, starting tonight, we have Inquiry starting at 7 p.m. Eastern, The Conservative Curmudgeon starting at 8 p.m. Eastern, and then myself and Gene, and eventually maybe Ross if he gets done with what he's got to do in time, and then myself and the Amish one will close things out before we head over to SHR Media. Programming note, this will be the last Wednesday night that we run BZ as a replay. Actually was supposed to run him last night, but since I wasn't on the show that I'm normally part of, that is leaving our schedule, I fell asleep early. But we have an announcement about that show that we have changes coming in about 3 weeks. That's all I'm going to say for now. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Hello, friends. Do you have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name's Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRNradio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLR. One moment, that wasn't the one I meant to play. This is the one I meant to play, which is actually out now on all your favorite platforms. We'll be right back. Hang on. What's going on? Oh, wait. It tells me when it's muted, but it was not. So hang on. I'd fire my producer, but I am my producer, so I can't fire my producer. I probably should, though. We'll be right back.
He's for an oath to make a difference. Ran for danger while others turned away. Now it seems the world's against him, and no one knows quite what to say. Live the life and follow the path forged in fire. Burning bright through the darkest night. Though the world may turn its back on him, he still stands. Won't lose the fight. He walked through fire with no applause. Carried burdens that nobody saw. Judgmental words and glares that wound. A price has been paid that few can understand. Live the life and follow the path forged in fire. Burning bright through the darkest night. Though the world may turn its back on him, he still stands. chose to endure when the world turned cold and he felt some more. He still rose to carry on. Live the life and follow the path forged desires. Burning bright through the darkest night. Though the world may turn its back on him, he still stands. Won't lose the backbone laid in fire. Still alive, to every former but current member of law enforcement. Thank you. From red dirt roads to the Capitol steps, Rick's calling truth, no time for regrets. Fire in his voice, facts in his hand, talking sense to the heart of this land. It's the Rick Robinson Show where the truth rides high. No spin, no script, just an eagle in the sky. From D.C. to Tulsa, he's calling it out. Mic in his hand, yeah, he's got the clout. Heartland Radio, raw and real. Tune in and speak up and feel what we feel. He's breaking down the noise, cutting through the lies.
Uh-oh. Guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody?
It is Wednesday, my dudes.
Coffee, raise that flag, stand your ground, never wave that rag. News with a backbone, voice of the free. Rick's got the pulse of liberty. It's the Rick Robinson Show, bold, unafraid. Truth bombs drop.
And welcome back into the Chat Lives Matter Day edition of the Rick Robinson Show, live right here on KLMradio.com. And again, I'll be back tonight pushing buttons first for the Inquiry crew. I think Aggie's sitting in for the Rogue Elf tonight, who has other obligations. 8 p.m. Eastern, we should have the Conservative Curmudgeon Radio Show, followed by Behind the Enemy Lines, typically hosted by Gene and Ross. However, Ross has obligations tonight as well. So I will be sitting in over there while we do a deep dive on this whole Don Lemon situation. I guess it's probably a good thing that I made it more of a footnote in my show tonight, because I think we're going to spend the whole hour talking about that. Then I'll be back with Amish for Rick and Orty. Then we'll head over to the SHR Media crew starting at 11 p.m. Eastern with the Boston Bastage, known as Sean Lewis, host of Edge of Liberty. And then tonight will be the final night, hopefully, of us running BZ as a replay on Wednesday nights, because starting next week, he'll be part of our live lineup on Tuesdays and Thursdays instead of replay on Wednesday, live on Thursday. So anyway, all right. So I think that's all the housekeeping. But I feel like that took forever, so we might as well just do this too and get it out of the way. So let's talk about our friends over at Freedom Chat. I don't know, some reason I had Signal in my head. So Freedom Chat, which if the administration had been using Freedom Chat at the beginning of this term, there would have been no issues with what happened. So freedomchat.com, go check them out. It is a private encrypted communication method. We have channels available over there so far for the Rick Robinson Show and the America Off the Rail Show. I did hear from one of the hosts that they plan on starting one sooner rather than later. So I haven't seen that go up yet, but once I know, you'll know. But again, it's freedomchat.com. You can pick whichever app you need from your phone, depending on whether it's an Android or an Apple. Again, cool things about Freedom Chat. One, it's yours. You can do with it what you want. There is no tracking of data. There's encryption protocols end to end. You can set it to where nobody can do a screen capture. You can set it to where messages disappear after a certain amount of time. Which honestly I've noticed Elon has done on X. So if I were Signal, if I were actually, I'm sorry, if I were Freedom Chat, I'd probably be like, hey, it was ours. You stole it. Give it back. Anyway, maybe that's just me. But yeah, so again, I mean, granted, I'm sure this probably sold a lot of conservative clicks because, oh, look, the lesbian wasn't even married. I don't care. What I care about is the fact that last week, somebody from a rather prominent put together video footage of the wrong car. So you can see, you can plainly see, and we did it frame by frame, that he never came in contact. That's the wrong one. It's not even the right color. It's not even anywhere near the right color, which is really annoying. But anyway, all right. So since I left my notes, let's get back. All right, so let's get into some of the things the justices have weighed in on so far and some arguments that they've heard this week. So, this week, the justices weighed cases that will define the next decade. Can a president remove officials from independent agencies, or does independence mean immunity? Can states restrict firearm carry on private property open to the public, or does the Second Amendment follow the citizen? Can law enforcement vacuum up location data from every phone near a crime, or does the Fourth Amendment still apply? And perhaps most tellingly, the court declined. Again, we went over this earlier, but they declined for now to rule on the legality of sweeping tariffs. So again, I think the reason that they are declining to rule right now, especially with Trump making noise about doing even more tariffs potentially, is because they are trying to get the wording exactly right. Because even if they were, I would say even 70-30 opposed, they would have already made the announcement just to shut them up about tariffs again. That's my take. I could be wrong. Remember, I'm a news guy, but I'm also an opinion guy, so I could be wrong. So, into hour 2. Let's get into Trump's year 1. So let's talk about the results so far. Donald Trump's first year back in office wasn't smooth, but it wasn't smooth primarily because the same agitators that didn't like him in office the first time, including the mainstream media maggots, made his life as difficult as possible. But even though it wasn't smooth, it was in fact rather consequential. Borders were actually enforced again. Interior law enforcement was restored. Energy policy returned to reality. Foreign adversaries recalibrated. Was it perfect? No, but is any presidency ever perfect? No. Messaging discipline does actually still remain Trump's Achilles heel, however. I know y'all hate it when I talk bad about Trump, but because I couldn't do a show yesterday and we had I figured out eventually why my hotspot wasn't working because I get all my TV stuff through the interwebs now. I was on my phone's hotspot for a little bit while we were figuring out what was going on with the internet. And I watched the entire speech yesterday. And honestly, after about 40 minutes, I was doing the whole King of the Hill. My God, are you still talking? I haven't done that impression for a while. So if it sounded worse outside of my head, I apologize for nothing anyway. But that's all. After about 45 minutes, I was like, dude, that's enough. You've said enough. There is such a thing as saying too much. I get it. With the last guy, we got nothing, but now you're giving us everything. And you got to find the middle ground because that's what leads to messaging mistakes and discipline issues. And it is still Trump's Achilles heel. And with as much as the media already hates them, he needs to stop giving them ammunition. Sorry, I said what I said. So tariffs created uncertainty in the beginning because all of the economists who ascribed to the Keynesian level or Keynesian model of economics thought we were bringing doom, despair, and agony on us, but they were wrong. They worked. They didn't cause nearly the headache that everybody thought they were going to cause. Yeah, you have all kinds of publications saying the cost of these things are 90% passed on to the consumer, blah, blah, blah. That is only if they choose to buy the brands that are affected by the tariffs, though. So to me, this is what I laughed my ass about off about for the last year. So you have Democrats who've never met a tax increase they didn't like until it was a voluntary tax increase, which I find rather interesting. Now, again, there were certain things that don't necessarily fall into the voluntary thing, like the steel tariffs, etc. But if you've listened to the news, a lot of the folks, even in those industries that were expecting things to get way worse, actually made things better because it made the steel here more affordable, etc. compared to, so I don't know. So yeah, I mean, look, half dozen to 1/6 of the other. But there is a key truth that the media refuses to say out loud because they can't, because that gives Donald Trump legitimacy and they can't have that. Year one wasn't about transformation, it was about stopping the bleeding. And that's the part the mainstream media will never let you talk about. Year one wasn't about making changes. Year one wasn't about, and he did. I mean, trust me, he did a lot of sweeping things. I've been alive for a long time. I'll be 53 in May. I've never seen a president move this quickly before. I've never seen an economy start responding this quickly before either, because they hit a lot of things all at once. And I know there are a lot of folks, and I saw this from even, Orty, who I work with, complaining that Pam Bondi's always on Fox News and doesn't really seem to be doing much of anything else. we're not we're not talking about the FBI's wins so far for this year. We're not talking about the people that were thought they were lost forever into human trafficking that they found, the children that they've recovered, the changes that they've made all through the division to make them start focusing on doing their jobs again. So we're going to get into more of that probably tomorrow because I didn't have that on the charts for today. So yes, for this week we will do Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday because I owe you guys a show. So if you'd rather go hang out with Earl at 11, you know what? I understand that. Go do it. And then next week we will have it set up to where I'm not crossing with people that I'm not trying to compete with anymore. But I just have to say this because we're going to do a deep dive on this tomorrow. I'm going to find you every scrap of information I can find about everything the FBI has done right because I think we've been too busy focusing on what the FBI has gotten wrong. And I will say this, being a guy who spent a lot of time wearing a uniform and carrying a gun, there are things that you don't know. There are things that you're probably never going to know. I know, and I see this even on our side. We live in a society now where, and for the folks that are younger than us, it's even worse now. But for the folks around our age, there are still times when we want everything wrapped up in a nice, neat, pretty little bow in 42 minutes or less, not counting commercials. And with this kind of stuff, if the FBI is doing what I think they're doing, that's going to take some time. The problem is now they're starting to run out of time. So now we're gonna have to start now we're into watching the clock because if the sweeping changes come through like I expect, the economy is gonna be off the board within the next 3 months. The Democrats won't have a leg to stand on with that, and they just won't because there'll be nothing to complain about anymore because you're already starting to see it. Fuel prices have gotten so low that everything is starting to creep back down. Now, I don't know if prices are ever going to be able to go back to where they were before because economies hate reverse inflation, which I guess technically it's called deflation, but still, um, because they don't like that either. But one of the things that Trump is doing that nobody's really talking about is he's starting to bring strength back to the dollar again. As we just basically go out on the world stage and say, hey, guess what? This is us. We're here. Deal with us or not. He is starting to bring strength back to the American dollar again. So even though we can't really do that much about inflation, other than getting it under control without causing other problems. If we can make everybody's dollars go further, that reverses some of the course on inflation. And as much as I am not a fan of his whole we're going to cap credit card interest at 10%, I understand why he's trying to do it. I'm not a fan of it. It's not what I voted for, but he's still the guy in charge. And I understand why he's trying to do it. This would be another thing that will stop inflation to a sense, because now if you miss a payment, your credit or your interest rate's not going to jump to 36, 37, 40%. I've been there. We are in a society now where we live paycheck to paycheck. I wasn't. I am now. I mean, hell, when Trump was in office, when I was seriously considering and started to pull the pin on retiring, I had $15,000 in the bank. I remember the last time I was able to say that. And because of Biden's policies, all that's gone. I'm still trying to put it back in there, but all of it's gone. Things are just now starting to get manageable again. I'm not having to pay twice as much at the grocery store. I'm not having to do all these different things that I was having to do before just to keep things the same. But this whole stopping the bleeding and this whole process of beginning a realignment, that reality was on full display in Davos today. The World Economic Forum used to set the agenda. This year, it watched elections instead. The mood wasn't confidence, it was calculation, because these people are afraid that Trump's momentum, the thing that put Trump in power in the first place, isn't a fading fad. This is America reasserting itself because we're tired of the bullshit. Now, the Democrats, they don't want that. They want us subservient. They want a new world order. Hell, you just saw Canada just last week meeting with China, you know, with the Prime Minister of Canada talking about how they are well, good, and primed to join the new world order, whatever the hell that even means. And now you've got Alberta going, we want out. I saw people all over social media, supposedly from Canada. I didn't use a checking location tool thing, probably should have, talking about how they're packing up and leaving Canada. If they do, I don't really care. But so, the presser that I was like, my God, are you still talking? The point Trump made yesterday, the presser wasn't about charm, it was about contrast. America first, energy abundance, trade leverage, borders as sovereignty. Davos didn't like it, but they listened because he made them listen. And then he marched out onto the Davos stage like Vince McMahon at a hype music entrance from the WWE and basically made them listen to him again for almost 2 hours in between question taking and the other stuff that he was doing. And he just basically laid it all out there. Look, Greenland is important to us. There's a reason we need to have Greenland. And I'll be honest, even as a history buff, I didn't realize that at one point we basically were in control of Greenland during, I think it was either World War One or World War Two. I don't think we should have gave it back. But again, Davos didn't like this because the era of elite consensus without voter consent, yeah, that's done. I don't think that's ever even coming back again. Now, Greenland isn't a joke. It's never been a joke to Trump. And you saw this today from China. China put out a statement basically condemning in really strong language and being very angry with us over our calls to assume control of Greenland. But again, Greenland isn't a joke anymore. And nowhere is that shift clearer than inside Greenland itself, because of course the folks that live there are like, we don't want to. I don't know how much of that I believe either, because if we're paying protesters here, how much easier is it to pay protesters elsewhere? But Greenland has very strategic location. They are the biggest area of Arctic shipping lanes. They have rare earth minerals, the missile defense corridors. Trump wants Greenland because he wants to make it the hub of the Golden Defense Dome. Greenland isn't about colonialism. It's about geography and power. Europe knows it, NATO knows it, and now much to the chagrin of the Democrats, the voters are learning it. This isn't about invasion. It's about leverage. And who sets the terms in a warming Arctic world? And that's just the truth of where we are right now. And again, the world is starting to see that we aren't taking their crap anymore. And trust me, a lot of them are afraid of it. You've seen them, ever since we did our DoorDash for Dumbasses program and just went and snatched Maduro out of his own bedroom and said, "Hey, how you doing? How you doing?" Everybody's freaking out because everybody on the world stage is like, "Oh my God, this violates international law," and Donald Trump's like, he's pulling Judge Dredd. We are international law, and he's not wrong. We're the only ones that enforce that shit. We're the only ones that follow it. So in essence, we're the only ones that said it, then we're the only ones that follow it. And then when we don't follow it, all the people that don't follow it either are like, "Oh my God, you're violating international law." One of my favorite things I've loved to see with the leftists over the last 2 weeks is every single one of them who, until Trump was elected, was screaming about Maduro stealing the election, which I found ironically delicious on multiple levels. But now, oh my God, we just snatched Venezuela's president. When did you recognize him as president? Because 5 minutes ago, your boy had a bounty out on his head. Just saying. Just saying. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, because we do still have more things to be discussing, Mondami is getting in some trouble. We're going to talk about that. So, Rooster weighing in on the whole Renee Good situation. Unpopular opinion, she couldn't be married to a woman even with a government doc. Yeah, he went there. I didn't, but he did. Blame the chat. My name is Rick Robinson. You are listening to my show, and we will be back for the final couple segments here in just a bit. So hang out. We'll be right back.
Darkness grips the heart of men, and truth becomes a lie. They dress their greed in borrowed prayers and call it justified. The loudest mouths preach mercy with a knife behind their smile. They laugh at those who won't bow down or walk their crooked mile. Those who stand for virtue will be rejected again and again, cast out in the cold for believing that right is still right. Even then, they'll say you're a fool for love and truth and lost for holding the line. When darkness grips the heart of men and truth becomes a lie, they trade their souls for silver and call the bargain peace. They curse the chains of righteousness while begging to be free. The crowd will cheer the liar if the lie feels warm and kind, but stones are safe for anyone who dares dares to reject the lies for the truth. Those who stand for virtue will be rejected again and again. Branded the enemy for refusing to kneel as weak men did. They'll crown the wolves as shepherds and blindfold every eye. When darkness grips the heart of men and truth becomes a lie. Blessed are the lonely who won't betray what they believe. The road is narrow, the cost is high, but chains don't set you free. I'd rather walk with scars and God than kneel with gilded hands. Truth don't need 1,000 voices, just one that dares to stand. Those who stand for virtue will be rejected again and again. But the fire they try to bury still burns in faithful men. And then let the ages judge the moment. Let heaven hear our cry. When darkness grips the heart of men, we will not live the lie. Take his name, but truth don't die. It burns eternal flame.
Welcome back into the Chat Labs Matter Day edition of the Rick Robinson Show. Now at its new later time, causing confusion for everyone because I made the decision at the last minute, primarily because I still wanted to sit there and watch Donald Trump's whole thing at Davos without, or at the WEF in Davos without making you guys sit through it too, and if you didn't want to. But yeah, so this week will be a little different. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Next week, we're going to our new same schedule, new time, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Again, Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'll be hanging out over in Earl's YouTube channel. We have been in discussion about trying to carry his show anyway, so I'm moving forward with some realignment of my own to make sure that we're able to do that. And again, I want to thank everybody for hanging out. Looks like we've got a few folks hanging out with us on the YouTube side. So if you're over there, make sure you're smashing that subscribe button, hitting that like button, maybe sharing some stuff out if you are, again, so inclined to do so. Would greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate it because we are trying to build up our YouTube presence over there. Looks like we've actually gone up a couple today. We were at 113 when we started. We're at 115 now, so I will take that. most of my focus was on X because X, it seemed, when Elon took everything over, was going to have the easiest monetization uh, path, and yeah, that turned out not to be true. So yeah, we're trying to get as many different monetization paths as possible going, so I don't keep having to go. Would you please support my streams? Please, sir, may I have some more? Because yeah, there are, like I said, I do this for a living now. I get paid a lot of different places, but there are times because I'm an independent contractor with a few folks. Sometimes I get paid different times, things like that. And I also have some side work that I do where those folks sometimes like to pay me at the very last minute. So, um, but anyway, again, really not trying to complain about that, just trying to point out that, you know, it happens. All right. So we told you before we went to break that our good friend Mom Donnie the Commie was in trouble, but you'll probably never guess why. Um, looks like he was on The View recently. We have about a minute and a half clip of that, I think. Maybe if I can get it to work. I had a feeling it was going to do that. That one was being really weird, so hang on. I am probably going to have to do a couple things to make it work properly because when I do hot switches like that, it gets cranky. So 1 second. All right, so hang on. And yes, I'm still promoting the new song now because it's awesome. Anyway, a lot of folks already know about it. First, that was one I guess Sam decided to push, so we've already had like 10,000 plays on social media off of that one across all platforms. So I was kind of happy about that. But yeah, now it's on. Now you can get it. It's on Apple Music. It's on Spotify. It's on YouTube. You can even purchase it, I believe, on Apple Music as your own. Also, I believe Amazon gives you that option. All right, so let's see if this works. Hang on.
Some of your appointees have come under fire for past social media posts. This often happens when new administrations come in. Your new chief equity officer made several now deleted comments disparaging liberal white women. Your tenant advocate tweeted that home ownership was a weapon of white supremacy and called to elect more communists, among other posts. What message do you think this conveys to New Yorkers, and how would you push back on this?
So what I would say is that if you want to know my views or my opinions, you'll find them in my words as the mayor of New York City. And I'm someone who's looking to make this a city that every New Yorker can afford. That includes those who are tenants, those who are homeowners, those who aspire to be homeowners. Because from this, we find that stability. And I think, frankly, what New Yorkers are also looking for are the outcomes. And that's what I care about, the outcomes and the excellence we deliver. And so one example, the mayor's office to protect tenants, the executive director that we hired about 20 days ago. In those 20 days, we have taken on a landlord that had more violations than I could count. And we have secured $30 million in guaranteed repairs for thousands of those violations. And sometimes when a politician tells you this, it sounds intangible. It just sounds like stats and statistics that you'll never feel and know. We have someone in the audience, Josie, who was a tenant that I met on that first day I was the mayor. I went into her apartment. She showed me living conditions that no one should ever see in this city. And I could see and feel the rust falling off my hands. And I asked her, how long have you been living with this? And she pointed at her 20-something-year-old son and said, before he was born.
Wow.
And now that $30 million, that commitment, that's going to fix her apartment and so many other tenants' apartments.
All right. So the funny thing is, and and you're starting to see this in New York, there are folks that are starting to complain that Mondami's cabinet and his picks for the people that are working under him aren't diverse enough. Surprising absolutely no one, including myself, except for apparently New Yorkers. But yeah, so you heard him make all kinds of excuses about all these people that are saying all these hateful things. Because remember, it doesn't matter if it was 30 years ago anymore. It only matters that, well, they must have meant it at the time or they wouldn't have said it. It doesn't matter if they've grown from it. You know, it's funny how they're the only ones that are allowed to say that. Because when I pointed out when Joe Biden was running for office that he once had to drop his campaign for lying, that he was an out and out blatant racist back in the day, he's changed, Rick. He's changed. Sure he has. All right. So I gotta say this, and I'm looking for confirmation on something real quick. because I can find no record of this. And it looks like Polymarket put out a post about 20 hours ago claiming that Donald Trump just signed an executive order reopening mental institutions. One, I wish that were true, but if it is true, I can't find any other recorded record of it anywhere. And as my good friend Jody just put out underneath that post, after looking at Minneapolis, I know where the first one should go. So, Mr. President, if you happen to be paying attention to this and you haven't done that yet, you probably should. Okay, sorry. So we already showed one person roasting some folks today at Davos. Looks like it happened again. So because Scott Bessent got in on the action. This is from Amy Curtis, a contributor here at KLR Radio, once a week on our weekend news roundup, which airs Fridays at 3 p.m. Eastern. So this just came out, actually, literally like 20 minutes ago. Scott Bessent just roasted Gavin Newsom in Davos. Gavin Newsom clearly has his sights set on a 2028 run for the White House. Why else would the outgoing governor of the failed state of California, my words, not hers, be in Davos this week? Yesterday, Town Hall reported on how Newscomb, again, my word, not hers, went on an unhinged rant about Donald Trump, Europe, and Greenland. And at some point, he called Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent smug. All right, so we got to stop right here because I got to talk about this because again, I didn't get to do a show yesterday. So if you missed it, fucking Gavin Newsom sitting there talking about how all of the people around here apparently need knee pads for Trump because he's a Tyrannosaurus Rex. He's either going to mate with you or consume you. Brother, that is some really sexually charged language. So I'm just curious as to how long you've been repressing these urges regarding POTUS. Anyway, so to this, and this is Amy speaking, so I'm going to actually quote this part. To that, this writer has to ask, has Gavin Newsom met Gavin Newsom? But Bessent doesn't need anyone to come to his defense. He took matters into his own hands and absolutely nuked Newsom from orbit. This is, and I quote, Governor Newsom, who strikes me as Patrick Bateman meets Sparkle Beach Ken, may be the only Californian who knows less about economics than Kamala Harris. He's there this week with his billionaire sugar daddy, Alex Soros, who is the real reason I think that Gavin Newsom kept mentioning knee pads. And Davos is a perfect place for a man who, when everyone else is on lockdown, when he was having people arrested for going to church, Bassett said, shame on him. He's too smug, too self-absorbed, and too economically illiterate to know anything. He also told Lawrence, let me know if you need any further clarification. For those who don't know, Patrick Bateman is the lead of American Psycho, a book by Bret Easton Ellis that was later turned into a movie starring Christian Bale as Bateman. It's the perfect way to describe Newsom, who will now always be Sparkle Beach Ken to me. Damn it, I'm not going to be able to unsee that now. Damn it, Amy. So here's a snippet from the New York Post regarding all of this dust-up, though. The Democrat governor sat in a last-minute open seat next to Bessent's staff during the Treasury Secretary's Fox Business panel. Newsom took notes and silently scoffed at some of Bessent's comments, including claims that Drill Baby Drill has pushed gasoline prices below $2 a gallon, which is not false, by the way. Now, Newsom state can't see that because of all the extra taxes and fees that they have regarding fossil fuels, because fossil fuels are going to destroy the planet, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. The funny thing about this whole, the earth is going to destroy the planet, or we're going to destroy the planet someday. We're still learning about the earth. Did you guys hear about this story? So, as an aside, because everybody, oh my God, the ozone layer is gonna go away, and CO2 gases are gonna rise, and all our water is gonna evaporate, then the ice is gonna melt, and then blah, blah, blah. All these different things that they've said over the years, none of which have come to pass. Do you know what they found? Scientists believe they have found in and well below the Earth's crust water. Not in the form that we see above the surface, but in a huge huge patch of rock that acts a lot like a sponge. They believe they have found more than 3 times the Earth's ocean surface water under our crust. Which leads me to a point that I've been trying to make for a long time. The Earth is alive. How do I know that? Because everything that God has ever breathed life into or created has been alive. Why do you think fossil fuels that we once thought were finite keep coming back? Now we're finding that there's this vast 2-3 times our oceans underneath the Earth's crust, stored in what looks to be some form of sponge. It's almost like the Earth has a circulatory system. So again, the fact that the conservatives, because one, what do we call ourselves again? Have allowed these people to hijack the idea that we're supposed to be good stewards for the planet is retarded to me. Because almost every conservative that I know has some sort of spiritual background or is at least agnostic, which basically begs the point of we know that none of this happened by accident. We just don't necessarily know what caused it. Because the other side, they think it's all some sort of happy cosmic accident and that some sort of magical fairy dust flipped the light switch of the Big Bang and nobody knows where it came from, why it came from, how it came from, or that it's ever going to happen again, which is dumb. But this is what I've been saying about all this tree hugging hippie crap for forever. Stop telling me that we have to embrace technology that is that in most cases is older than I am. And I'm pretty fucking old, just ask my kids, because they'll tell you. But look, let's just be honest for a second. If we were actually using the things that we could use to reduce plastic waste without having to do retarded things like paper straws, which make absolutely no sense because you have a plastic straw and a paper wrapper, or a paper straw and a plastic wrapper, because once the straw that is paper gets exposed to the air, it's going to start decomposing. But newsflash, ladies and gentlemen, hemp is a wonderful product. And you know what they discovered a long time ago? You can actually make hemp that will break down over time in the environment. You can make it into plastic and it becomes biodegradable plastic. Why are we not using that technology? How much less of islands of trash would we have if we were using the technology that we are starting to be able to understand to our benefit instead of letting people lie to us about what it takes to make the world a cleaner place? You know why? Petroleum lobbies. Everybody talks about marijuana and how up until Trump signed this executive order, which Congress needs to get off their ass and deal with, was a Schedule 1 narcotic, but it's because of the dangers of marijuana. Look, I understand now that it's been medicalized, people have been raising the concentration of THC. I don't necessarily agree with that, but it's a plant. We should have just left it alone. Because again, according to the Bible, we have dominion over everything on the earth. We're allowed to partake of every single fruit, every single tree, every single plant, should we choose to do so. The only two that he commanded that we stay away from were the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and the tree of eternal life. Well, I'm here to tell you we're about to break through that last one too. There have been now 3 different studies that I have seen coming from places like Japan and China where they are finding ways to reinvigorate old cells. So they have been able to turn the clock back on 80-year-old cells, basically cutting the cell's age in half. Now, I, for one, after having to adjust to life after 50, am kind of okay with this. I don't think it's ever going to be affordable for me and you, at least not in my lifetime, but I'm kind of okay with the idea that we could, eventually take a pill and, suddenly we have suddenly I'm 26 again instead of 52. 26-year-old me would love a second chance because there's things I would do differently. Just saying. And then there's this. So they have been using technology to basically reactivate a gene that we have. Salamanders, how they can regrow things. They figured out how to turn that gene on and off again in humans. I'm thinking about how much better that would make things for people, that don't have a functioning pancreas anymore or are trying to get kidney transplants. Everybody remember in Star Trek 4 where McCoy said, "Oh my God, what are we living in the dark ages? Dialysis here, take this pill." 5 minutes later, the old woman's like, "Oh my God, I have a new kidney. Doctor gave me a pill and I have a new kidney." I think we're not there yet, but we're getting close. Again, sometime in our near future, if we don't manage to blow each other up, it could be an amazing place. And this is gonna piss off my conservative friends. I have always said if we could find a way to do away with currency without it leading to an upheaval, I would be okay with that because I would much rather just be able to do what I want to do with my day and try to see what I could do with my time instead of always feeling like I had to be on a time clock or, maybe there's days when I don't want to work. Maybe there's days when I don't want to write. You know, existing, again, we did it to ourselves, thanks Adam and Eve, but existing should not be the primary reason why you're here. So I don't know. So that's why a lot of my conservative friends who also like Star Trek get irritated with me when I talk about the fact that yes, I do watch the new stuff. Because one, even if it sucks, at least they're still trying to put out new content. This stuff's been out since the 60s. I will also say this. The only wokeness that Star Trek espoused in its beginning is the wokeness that should have been espoused in its beginning. And it should be the stuff they're sticking with right now. And that is stop focusing on all the outside characteristics that make us different than each other. Focus on the fact that really, for the most part, we're all the same on the inside. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't antithetical ideologies that cannot be in the same space at the same time. And that's why we're running into the issue that we're starting to have with all these Islamists and Muslims and everything else. And that's the other reason Europe is really pissed off at us right now because we're not pulling punches about their bullshit anymore either. But so back to this because it squares the circle back to Davos on the way out the door. During Donald Trump's address at Davos on Wednesday, he reiterated comments from a day earlier saying he and Newsom used to get along. We're going to keep the people in We're going to help the people in California. We want to have no crime. I know Gavin was here. I used to get along so great with Gavin when I was president. Gavin is a good guy when he was president. I guess he means president the first time. On Tuesday, Newsom urged European leaders not to give in to T-Rex Trump. It's time to stand tall and firm and have a backbone. I can't take this complicity. People rolling over. Newsom told a reporter when asked what Europe should do amid the president's threats to take over Greenland. I should have bought a bunch of knee pads for all the world leaders. California had a budget surplus when Newsom took office in 2019. In just 7 short years, Newsom managed to turn that budget into a budget surplus into a massive $45 billion deficit. It's so bad, Democrats in Sacramento are looking to steal 5% of billionaires' wealth, not just their income, and revisiting the idea of levying taxes retroactively on those wealthy people who were smart enough to flee the state a while ago. So maybe he isn't the guy that, Europeans should be listening to. But maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just me. All right. So the good news is I didn't just sit idle while I was changing my times around. I've been getting caught up on the archives that I fell behind on. So you'll see a couple of podcasts that came out today that are earlier in the month because I'm getting caught back up again. All right. That's kind of awesome. Oh, sorry. The Canadian dude that I dismissed again on my timeline earlier. I guess somebody else just responded to him. Was like, "Damn, it took a long time for that response to come back, huh?" I guess Canadian internet must suck worse than I thought. So that was from at safety underscore concerns on X. All right, we're going to get out of here. Don't forget, starting over again this evening, 7 p.m. Eastern, I'll be back pushing buttons for the Inquiry Crew. Again, that's Stephen L. Hall and tonight guest Inquisitor Aggie the Barkeep. Actually, I think it's Aggie the Bar Babe. I think is what it says. I don't remember if it says Barkeep or Bar Babe. Anyway, and then I will be hanging out pushing buttons for the Conservative Curmudgeon Radio Show tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, followed by sitting in on Behind the Knee Lines with Gene, and Ross may or may not make an appearance towards the end if his obligations wrap up soon enough. And then I'll be hanging out with the Amish one at 10 p.m. Eastern for Rick and Orty, and then we'll head over into SHR Media Land. First for the Edge of Liberty, second for BZ Berserk Bobcat Saloon. This will be our last rerun night for him on a Wednesday night. Starting next week, he will be live carried on both Tuesdays and Thursday nights right here live on KLRM Radio. And unfortunately, the Manorama show is leaving our schedule because that show is being stood down. There is one last episode airing next week that we will not be carrying. And then the week after that, we has changes. Changes. I'm not sick enough to do the Peter Brady squelch. I tried. But again, we're going to get out of here, ladies and gentlemen. Want to thank those of you that hung out in the chat today. It looks like it was we had VC for a minute. We had Rooster. I saw some other folks sharing the streams, but they never bothered to comment. It's all right. I still love you. Thanks for sharing my stuff, man. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Same new time. And remember, next week we go to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Bye, everybody. Back later tonight. Say goodnight, Grace.